For Prince Christoph, this was a first. Not just a step into a new life, but a leap into an abyss of the unknown, where every breath seemed a crime, and every thought a sin. He stood by the carved oak door that led to the bridal chamber, and dared not cross the threshold. Young, ludicrously restrained, raised in the Duchy of Weimar under the strictest canons of Protestant morality, he felt a suffocating lump of awkwardness rise in his throat. Anxiety gripped him like ice water, and his gaze was stubbornly fixed on the marble floor, making him look more like a frightened novice than an heir to the throne. He lingered, measuring out precious minutes, like a child awaiting inevitable punishment. Behind that door, Aurora, his bride, and the irresistible centuries-old duty of the first night awaited him. But Prince Christoph felt neither fervor nor desire, only a chilling horror of the carnal sin that seemed to have been ingrained in him since infancy. He prayed, almost silently, whispering words that were lost in the rustle of the night wind outside the window, nervously fiddling with amber rosary beads hidden in the pocket of his ceremonial coat. Aurora, Duchess of Ventador, his newlywed wife, waited in the room, immersed in the silken twilight. Exhausted by the endless ceremonies, transitions, hundreds of judging glances, and most importantly, the tension of the moment itself, she simply fell asleep, letting out a sigh of relief. Sleep came to her as a blessing, neither a touch, nor a hungry look, nor even a single word broke the silence. Their first wedding night became merely a sad formality, a ghost of a ritual. Christoph, entering, could not bring himself to wake her. He lingered by her bed, quiet, almost spectral, like a shadow. This was the beginning of their marriage in the Grand Duchy of Arcadia, and in the seaside residence, Summer Quay, where they spent their first weeks, everything continued in the same agonizingly monotonous rhythm. Heavy silence, painful constraint, an invisible yet strong wall of fear and incomprehension between the spouses. Aurora was born in the very heart of the continent, in the Duchy of Ventador, on lands scented with apple blossoms and sea salt. Her father, Duke Gaspar de Ventador, a descendant of an ancient yet liberty-loving lineage, was a poet at heart and a rebel by calling. Having married his own cousin, Duchess Eloise, he soon became captivated by absolute freedom, seeking inspiration in distant travels and the arms of other women. Eloise, meanwhile, remained at Saint-Esprit Castle, alone with the children. Their union turned into a strange coexistence, based on respect, but devoid of passion. In this family, full of the spirit of free thought and creative chaos, 7 children were born. Aurora was the 5th. She was closest to her elder sister, Sibylla, the one who would later ascend the throne of the powerful Orion Empire. The sisters were inseparable. Together, they raced on horseback across the fields like 2 wild furies, and learned fencing like boys. Their father, Duke Gaspar, affectionately called Aurora the Arrow of the North for her lightness, slender build, and swift agility. She possessed an inner, almost steel-like strength. Her natural independence harmonized with aristocratic severity. She was an observant and calm child, capable of remembering the smallest details of her surroundings. The marriage proposal found her suddenly, like a northern storm. Aurora's fiancé became Prince Christoph, the heir apparent to the Duke of Arcadia, who was destined to rule the Grand Duchy of Arcadia. The dynasty that governed this southern kingdom desperately needed to strengthen its political position against aggressive northern neighbors. the choice fell upon Aurora, not by chance. Her sister, Sibylla, already sat on the throne of a mighty empire, and this union promised Arcadia a firm kinship with an influential power. Furthermore, her portrait, sent to Lazur, and the capital of Esperanza, was remarkably successful. Graceful and vivid, it captivated Prince Christoph. Fair skin, astonishing eyes the color of an autumn sky, long chestnut hair. She seemed both noble and primordially natural. Aurora, restraining her curiosity, only cautiously asked her faithful Mademoiselle Giselle, "They say he has a bad eye, or is that just malicious gossip, Giselle?" "Gossip, Your Highness," Giselle hastily assured her. "Everything is perfectly fine. He may be shy, but he is virtuous as a holy hermit." The bride's dowry was quite modest, only 25,000 gold ducats. But this marriage was not about trading gold. What mattered was an untarnished reputation, impeccable appearance, and, crucially, the ability to ensure the continuation of the dynasty. Aurora was young, perfectly healthy, and incredibly beautiful. When her galley arrived in the port of Lazur, the city was already buzzing with rumors of her beauty. People poured into the streets, greeting their future duchess. Later, aboard the military frigate, when she first met her fiancé face to face, Aurora was the first to break the suffocating silence. "Bonjour, Christophe," she said in French, leaning forward to examine his face more closely. Christophe, blushing to the roots of his hair, barely dared to kiss her forehead. His awkwardness was so obvious, it might have provoked laughter. He had no idea how to behave with a woman, especially one as beautiful as Aurora. But she did not dwell on it then. She thought that youth, romance, and mutual attraction would inevitably take their course over time. From the very first days of her stay in the new country, Aurora found herself within a ring of subtle palace intrigues that wounded her proud heart. Gowns arrived late. The schedule was chaotic. No one knew who was responsible for what. Her introduction to the Arcadian court was like plunging into icy water. Unlike the Ventadorian simplicity, everything here was overtly theatrical. The balls were dominated by the strictest ceremonials. Christophe felt even more constrained in this environment. He barely spoke to anyone. In conversations with his parents, his mother, Grand Duchess Agnes, a dominant and God-fearing woman, usually answered for him. Aurora noticed. Christophe looked at her with respect and timid admiration, but there was no spark of fire or flicker of desire in that gaze. She expected romance, but received only a heavy silence. The evening came when everything was supposed to change. Grand Duchess Agnes personally escorted her son and daughter-in-law to the door of their chambers, kissed them, wished them a blessed night, and hastily withdrew. Mademoiselle Giselle helped Aurora prepare and leave. Christophe remained in the antechamber, nervously pacing from the window to the door. Then, taking a deep, ragged breath, he hurriedly crossed himself, as if preparing for battle, and finally entered. Aurora was already asleep, overcome by exhaustion. Christophe gently, almost soundlessly, lay down beside her. He never brought himself to wake her. It was their first night, and far from the last, spent in cold, unbearable silence. The honeymoon should have been the start of true intimacy, but it merely became a prolonged continuation of that same silent night. Prince Christophe still did not dare to approach Aurora. He retreated further into his religious shell. He was raised in a strict Catholic tradition and viewed any physical attraction as a mortal, dangerous sin. The marital duty seemed to him an unbearable, agonizing ordeal. Sometimes, late at night, he would kneel at the head of the bed, reading prayers in Latin for a long time. And only then, with a heavy sense of guilt, would he lie down next to the deeply sleeping Aurora, not daring to touch her. Rumors spread through the palace with frightening speed. Chambermaids, engaged in attending to the bed linens, noticed with growing astonishment. There were no traces, no evidence of the marriage's consummation, neither on Aurora's nightgown nor on the sheets. This caused quiet panic within the court circles. Aurora, who initially tried to convince herself of his exceptional shyness, eventually clearly sensed the strangeness of what was happening. She maintained silence, but inwardly felt that something terrible stood between them. He is kind. He is very kind. But he fears me, Giselle, Aurora confessed to her faithful companion. Looking out at the shimmering lights of Lazur, "Perhaps he is just too modest, Your Highness," Giselle whispered, "or too frightened by the responsibility. Sometimes I think he is ready to run away, abandon everything, and become a monk, just to avoid being my husband," Aurora said, adding, "And I honestly do not know what I, as a woman, am supposed to do about it." The situation was becoming critically delicate. The court, the capital, and all of Esperanza demanded an heir. Without one, her position remained precarious. Grand Duchess Agnes, though pretending not to notice anything, could not hide her anxiety. Several times she tried to speak with Christoph, but the prince averted his eyes and avoided the conversation each time. Nearly 2 long months passed. Then Giselle sought the advice of Abbot Lemoyne, the spiritual mentor. Abbot Lemoyne, at the insistence of the Grand Duchess, invited Christoph for a lengthy and frank discussion. What exactly was said between them remained a secret. But after that conversation, the awkward situation at least slightly moved off the dead center. However, Christoph could not admit, even to his spiritual father, that the problem was deeper than mere shyness. Since childhood, Prince Christoph had suffered from a painful physical condition, a medical ailment, a condition he dared not mention even to a doctor, and which at the time was considered a terrible disgrace. He kept postponing the operation that could resolve the issue, refusing to acknowledge the ailment itself, and until then, physical intimacy between the spouses remained completely impossible. Aurora, quickly and intuitively, understood. She would have to learn patience. She didn't make scenes or complain. Instead, she began to seek saving outlets in the life of Lazur that could fill her empty existence.